I'm so sorry. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our February 12th Board of Education meeting. At this time, I would ask you to please rise while our student leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Hazel. Ms. Germano, any changes to the meeting agenda?
We have one change, item 9E, 3028, employee disciplinary matter.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to item 5A. Dr. Scanlon.
So we're very lucky this evening to be speaking about some teacher recognitions and administrative recognitions in the room. So we're going to start off with our first awardee. This is one of our outstanding administrators, our coordinating chair for secondary phys ed and health, has been named the Suffolk Zone Health Teacher of the Year, Christina Driscoll. Just a couple more. All right. The New York State Education Department seeks to build expertise in the teaching and administration of virtual hybrid schools, programs, and courses. The VITAL, Virtual Implementation of Teaching and Learning Educator Program, intends to develop a cadre of expert or VITAL educators who are able to turnkey professional learning content to colleagues throughout the state. VITAL educators will build their capacity to transform learning by addressing students' diverse needs, including students with disabilities, English language learners, social emotional learning, SEL, and culturally responsive sustaining education, CRSE, through cutting-edge virtual learning strategies, innovative tools like AI, and more. This intensive 6-month program offers dynamic online modules, collaboration, and professional learning, New York's community, PLC, cohorts and coaching sessions, all designed to empower New York educators to champion virtual learning across the state. We are very lucky to have two of our educators in Three Village, our VITAL educators, Ms. Gina Veracci and Janine Lombardo. I feel like they're all on one side and on the other. A few more. So this year, we made nominations, and if one of them is chosen as nominations for New York State Teacher of the Year. This New York State Teacher of the Year, identify and celebrate one teacher per year as the New York State Teacher of the Year, who will represent all of New York State teachers at events through the state and at national levels with Teachers of the Year across the United States. We nominated two teachers from the district this year, Katie Wonderland and Virginia McCaffrey. florists in the district are thanking us for doing these award ceremonies because they're making a lot of money tonight. All right. The New York State Master Teacher Program is a vibrant professional network of more than 1,400 outstanding public school K-12 STEM teachers throughout the state who share a passion for their own STEM learning and for collaborating with colleagues to inspire the next generation of STEM leaders. One of our teachers has been named as a bright light at the Association of Suffolk Supervisors for Educational Technology, ASSET. Bright lights are selected due to their exemplary integration of technology into their educational environment. So this teacher has gotten both the New York State Master Teacher Program and the ASSET Bright Light Award. Nicolette DiMartino. So if the teachers that are honored tonight and their families would like to depart, we understand. I know you really don't want to stay for the next hour and a half of the meeting, so we completely understand if you'd like to leave. Congratulations and have a wonderful evening.
All right, that brings us to our student representative report. Ms. Hazel Kojas.
Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be back and sharing some updates from our high school after somewhat of a gap since my last time being here due to break and midterms. First off, I'd like to recognize the incredible accomplishment of our Science Bowl team, who recently took first place at the Long Island Regional Science Bowl. This achievement speaks to the hard work and talent of our students, and we're so proud of their success. On the topic of science, we also have 3 of our seniors, Katie Duong, Daniel Liang, and Sean Skinner, being named scholars in the 2025 Regeneron Science Talent Search. This is an incredible achievement, and their hard work and dedication to science is truly inspiring. I can't even imagine how much work goes into that. In addition to these academic achievements, students' well-being is also the top priority at the high school. Recently, our Team Ward initiative held a stress management workshop for students. It was a great opportunity for everyone to learn practical tools for managing stress and navigating the challenges of school life. Everyone even got to go home with a cool little package with some stress tools in them. In sports news, our Ward Melville cheerleading team has had an outstanding season. They placed 2nd in the nation for their game day routine and 6th in the competitive division. This team has made history year after year, and this incredible achievement does not go unnoticed. Looking ahead to some of the fun events at school, after a vote by the senior class, this year's prom committee recently announced this year's theme of Down the Rabbit Hole, Alice in Wonderland. I'm so excited to see the outcome of the day and night commitment that the prom committee works towards. Prom, being so unique to Ward Melville, is such an amazing event every year that not only brings the whole community together, but has seniors excited for months and even years in advance. We've also been hard at work raising money for important causes. The Student Government's Raffles for a Cause fundraiser, being one of our biggest of the year, raised over $1,000 for the Corey's Promise Foundation, and the Triumph Music Honor Society's Ward Melville's Got Talent fundraiser showcased the amazing musical talents of our students. Both events were a great success, and it's wonderful to see our community coming together to support such meaningful causes. Another highlight from this past week was the 7th Annual Career Fair, which was organized by the Three Village Industry Advisory Board and our business classes. The event brought together students, parents, local businesses, and community leaders to explore potential career paths and fields of study. A big thank you to Ms. Lippman and the Three Village Industrial Advisory Board for hosting such a fantastic event. As we look forward to the coming days, we will once again be participating in the PS I Love You Day on February 14th. This event focuses on raising awareness around mental health and suicide prevention, and our PBIS team, along with the student committee, has planned a week of activities to support this important cause. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of creating a supportive and inclusive environment for all. Finally, don't miss the Word Mobile Players one-act play this Thursday and Friday evening at 7 p.m. We also have varsity basketball playoffs coming up. Our girls team will play Thursday afternoon and the boys team will play Friday afternoon, both at 4:15 p.m. It's a great opportunity to show your support for the student athletes. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Great job as always. And I will just say, Karen and I were at the first prom committee meeting. Wow. It's going to be something, as usual. All right, that takes us to 6B, our program review. Dr. Deanna Rinaldi.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, Board of Education, members of the Three Village Cabinet, and on behalf of Educational Services, I want to thank you for letting me present on all the wonderful things that all of our committees have been working on all year and previous years leading up to our work this year. So during this presentation, I will be focusing on both elementary and secondary, highlighting all of the work that we've been doing. We've had many goals this year, including reconfiguration, but not just all about reconfiguration. We've also been working on other things to enhance our instructional practices and our programs. So I'm not going to speak too much to the reconfiguration piece, only because Mr. Holmonia, Mrs. Keene, Mr. Jansen had shared a lot of information in their presentations of what that will look like for our students, but I will go into other areas as well. And we've talked about this before. I know Dr. Biscari has mentioned this, but in absence of our state data, due to the limited number of students that take our state assessments, we've discussed it before, but we're looking for ways to come up with other data points for our students to see how we're doing compared to using our New York State standards with our curriculum. So we are using AimsWeb and iReady, and as Laura Pimentel's presentations have also shared with all of you, but we're looking to come up with benchmark assessments that I will speak to in future in the presentation. All right, this is, I think, a great visual to show you all so that it may make more sense. Hopefully I don't confuse you anymore, but this helps me speak to what we do each and every day in our subjects, in our courses. So if you want to look at the bottom, starting at the visual with the New York State Learning Standards, that's what we use to guide everything that we do. So looking at our curriculum, that is our roadmap for teachers to use. That's what we teach each and every day. And then if you want to go right or left, if you want to look at the instruction, that is what our teachers are doing. If you go towards the left for assessment, we're using that both to help us instruct, but also to help us go back to our curriculum, revisit it, see where there's gaps to move forward in our work. And obviously, we're always reflecting, we're informing, and adjusting. So as you see all the arrows, that's what it's showing. All contributes to our student learning. So now for our elementary program, I just wanted to highlight the things that we already have in place for our students that we're hoping to have for next year. So besides, our basic areas of ELA, math, science, and social studies, I wanted to highlight the other areas that we have in place. So our students have art, they have health, they have library, they have music, and they have physical education. As far as moving forward, this year we had a 5th grade, as you all know, a guidance counselor to help us transition our students into our middle school model. So what we've done, we've had our library special still for those 5th graders to keep it consistent with all of our grades. Moving forward, we're looking to have that again for next year because our 5th graders will now always be transitioning into the middle school. So having that collaboration between library and our guidance department has been truly remarkable. It's really been a great asset to our program for elementary. And for 5th graders, they will still continue to departmentalize for next year, mostly in social studies and science. So we're continuing that. Now I'm going to go into our math committee work, specifically for elementary. So they have wrote curriculum last year for our district, and now we're looking to build our benchmark assessments. So teachers on the committee, they came up with benchmark assessments that are New York State standard based. So those, it's going to be the first time we're giving those out. I know Dr. Biscari has been speaking towards this in this goal, and we have done so this year. So those students in those grades will be taking the benchmark in June, and then that will give us information as to how to better our instruction moving forward. They've also been piloting math programs. We are, revisiting to see if what we have right now is what's best for our needs, right, as we've already wrote the curriculum. So once we finish the pilot, towards the end of March, then April we come back together and we decide on what program best meets our needs. Our elementary science committee, so they have also written curriculum this past year, and now we're looking for other things to enhance the curriculum that we currently have. So they've been reconvening, they've been talking through all those pieces, and with the science investigations, just to explain a little bit about that, they're hands-on labs. They're not counted on the actual grade for the state assessment for our students, but they are a piece that has to be completed by our students. So even if students come from outside of our district, we have to make sure that those children had either received it in their district, or are we going to have them make sure that they take it with us. And they are categorized for grades 3 through 5, and then again for the 5th grade test, and then for the 8th grade test, they're looped grades 6 through 8. So now literacy. Okay, I'm going to try not to over-talk literacy, but that is really one of our greatest highlights that we have going on as a district, because we have made a lot of shifts in this area, and of course it's one of the foundational pieces to what we do. So the literacy committee is a wonderful group of educators that we have administrators, we have teachers on the committee, and we have piloted programs last year. We went through many of them, and we found the jackpot of what works best for us and our needs. So with that, we've adopted HMH into reading. We also use Hegarty for grades pre-K, K, and 1, and then we have our foundations. And all of those programs, I will go deeper into them as I present, but all of these pieces, sorry, I do have photos of them, they target certain areas in literacy and how we educate our children and how to read part. So I'll go into that a little bit deeper. Also, this committee, though, before I move on, they've been writing our ELA K through 5 curriculum. They've been very, very busy because it is a very large task. They have been meeting weekly, bi-weekly, depending on their schedules, and with that, they're making sure that everything is aligned, like I've shared before, to the New York State standards. So all of the research right now and all of discussion over the science, around the science of reading, these are some of the shifts that we have done as a committee. So New York State has given us a lot of guidance and wonderful guidance. So the literacy briefs I'm going to speak to, that's one piece. The New York State standards, obviously, that I keep mentioning. The 5 pillars of reading, I'll go into that. The big 6 skills and competencies, and also the literacy best practices for our early learners and readers. So something else that we've been visiting as a committee, we did look into these 2 resources. We've read pieces of them together, and it's trying to have that shifting of what we're trying to have done in literacy in our elementary buildings. I'm not going to go into all the briefs. As I promised a colleague I wouldn't, but because I could talk about this all day. But these are the briefs that the state has given us as guidance. So each brief discusses a piece of the science of reading, and it really just shows the shifting from what our earliest learners in pre-K, what that looks like, and how it shifts into what our secondary years look like for our students. So obviously, phonics, phonemic awareness, more basic decoding skills happen earlier on, and then we kind of wean off of that and we look at different things for our secondary students. Now, these are the 5 pillars of reading. You can see them up there. I won't go so deep into it, but what the state has done, this has always been past practice for all districts, but they've added this sixth pillar, which is the oral language piece to what we do. So it is extremely important. There's a lot of research based around oral language, and especially in our younger years, we're looking at ways, and that's where Heggerty comes in, that program for our youngest learners that's going to really focus on the oral language piece to what we do. This is the other document that goes along with the best practices that I mentioned before. So each of those 6 areas, the state has broken them down for districts. I just pulled up fluency just for an example, that every district needs to go through, make sure that their curriculum is aligned to these 6 competencies. And rest assured, we are very aligned, but we are using this to help write our curriculum. This is another document. So this committee, these teachers, these educators are working through all of these documents to make sure we're not missing anything for our students. This here is, I think you may have seen it before, but this is our Essentials of Learning. We've had this for many, many years as a district, but what is semi-new, 3 years ago, we did put this on the internet, so if you go to our website, you'll have access to this. I just wanted to show you the visual that it shows you, obviously, the learning standards you can see on the left side, so parents can see what standards that we're working on, but then as each grade level, when you click on them, you will see exactly what, an overview of what is covered in every subject area. So I would love you to go visit it and see what you think, but it gives you a good overview. I'm not going to go too much into this because we would replicate Ms. Keene and Mr. Jansen's presentations, but I just wanted to remind us of what our middle school program will look like. And just the additional piece that we've talked about is electives offered for our students is STEAM, and we have START, and I want to make sure that I could highlight that. That's a course that is on self-awareness, time management, achievement, results, and teamwork. So a lot of our executive functioning curriculum that has been written would be used for this 6th grade course, and it's really supposed to be there to set them up for success. It's going to be a wonderful course, and I know that the students will enjoy it, and it also helps with the other subject areas of how to prepare for a research paper or project, or how to study, things like that will help benefit any student. I also wanted to mention that we had our parent orientations at the middle schools February 4th for incoming 6th and 7th grade students, which was wonderful. And the students also were able to have visits to the schools, and the feedback was really well received. The children enjoyed it, and I know the staff did a great job with that. The current 8th and 9th graders also had visits at the high school, so that was a great transition period for them as well. So all around has been very successful for our kiddos. This is also something I want to share, and a lot of you that have students at the secondary level, children at the secondary level, you would already have seen the secondary course catalog, but I did want to at least note it here that our program of study lives here on the internet. I also want to thank Deirdre Rubenstrunk and the technology department for organizing this. Lauren Pimentel's office as well. It took a lot of time and a lot of work to get this the way we really wanted it to be as successful as we could. Okay, let me move on. This is what the program of study would look like if you clicked on the link that I have below here. And again, this is the new face for us, and it's beautiful. So I thank the technology department for making that. All of our courses are listed within this document. Now I'm going to shift into CTE for our secondary students, and that's career technical education. We already have 2 programs that I'll talk about, but these courses are work-based learning experiences for our students. They're hands-on. They're very exciting. The children, actually, they love it if they're in one of these programs, and they work through practice, and they have application tests that they have to also take to have the endorsement. So I know this is really small, but again, I wanted to highlight this is in our course catalog, and it is an overview of our marketing CTE program. So it explains exactly what the students would need. And for 2026 and to 2027 school year, we're looking to enhance our CTE programs and have another one in technology. We haven't figured out just yet the specific of what that will look like in technology, but we know we want it to live there. We have a lot of student interest, and I think it'll benefit them to have it in that area. So we're working with the state liaison. She's actually a specific Long Island liaison that has been helpful in getting us all the information that we need. We can apply in October, every school year, that's the date, and then it would take until the following year to really get approval and get things in motion. So we're already in the process. With that, there's also an opportunity for us to have the Perkins Grant when you have 3 CTE programs, so that would be extra funding that could be useful to help support students complete this endorsement. And I just highlighted again the child study one. So these are the requirements. We have the child care program as well that students can get the CTE endorsement with. Okay, curriculum writing. So again, I've spoken, I think, a lot about these things, so I don't want to overdo, but we did have a consultant that helped us last year realign what our documents would look like for writing our curriculum. So the members on there, we have directors, we have chair people that were on that committee. They did wonderful work around coming up with what Three Village should look like. So every district does what fits, what's fitting to them. So we came up with our own template, and now everything is housed in the intranet that, again, Deidre Rubenstrunk and her team has created. So it holds all of our documents in this intranet for teachers to access and be able to find that tool very easily. So in educational services, that's our ongoing project that we want to have every single course, even the new ones that we create or we bring back, we revise and we update that intranet. Okay. This you've probably recognized through Laura Pimentel's presentations, but I just wanted to also highlight that we do have our response to intervention. That is what we've called our committee for many years, that looks at student progress and ways that we can help out in our tiered system. So if you look here, the green is our Tier 1 services, so that's support for every student in your classroom. And then as we look at our data, we look at our EamsWeb, our iReady, our future benchmark assessments that we're creating. If we need to support a student a little bit differently, that's our Tier 2, so it's more targeted. It could be classroom-based, or it could also be working with a provider, whether a math IAS provider or a reading specialist. And then if we need to go the next step to help that student, then we call it a Tier 3, and it's a little bit more intensive. Could be one-to-one, could be a few students, but the frequency and ratio would change. So this is what we've always called our team, but now with trying to make sure we're capturing our students as a whole, which we always do, we changed our look, Three Village style, to our multi-tiered system of supports, so MTSS. And if you look here, it's really the same thing I just shared with you, but instead of just the academics, we also look at students, their behavior, we target that, and the same thing, we go through tiered services for what that would look like. And then family engagement, that's, it's pretty broad. There's a lot of things that we do, obviously, with our families. But as far as this, we really focus on attendance and how can we support students and parents with helping students, coming into school. And I know we talked a lot about that with Ms. Pimentel's presentations, that, we want to make sure that our numbers are looking good for our kiddos to come into school. So we just discussed this at all of our team meetings when we need to. And again, you can see my theme with the arrows. We always are analyzing, implementing, evaluating, and defining what we do. So sorry, I went fast, but I was trying to not take up too much time. But thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
Oh,
I
Doug?
actually, I
Oh, go ahead.
Never mind.
I just wanted to thank you, and this is one of my favorite committees, which I'm weird. I love talking to people that are on this committee because I just think the amount of work that you guys do is fantastic. Between the teachers and the administrators and just the time and effort you guys put into that, it's very appreciated and very well done. Just a couple of quick things. The time frame for review. Do you have different areas of the curriculum that you look at every year, and how do you choose that?
So there's a few things that we do. Reconfiguration, that
Obviously,
jumped to the
yes.
top, right? So we actually, I forgot to mention this, we have 24 projects going on currently. Typically, we do those, a lot of our curriculum running over the summer, but because time was of the essence, and also we thought we needed a lot of teachers to be part of this, that summer sometimes, it's not the best time for everyone, so during the school year was definitely the best way to go. So it could be that a reason like that. It could be that we're bringing up a course that either we haven't had in many years and bringing it back, or it's a brand new course that we have another committee that looks at those and decides, is this going to fit into our program or not. It could be we look at the curriculum, but also if standards change, that would be another time that we would be doing that timely. Or every 5 years is typical for us to look at our programs that we use, not so much the curriculum, but that sometimes can change a little bit of what we do, the way our program could be formatted, but typically every so many years, if it's not a state change for us. Like the literacy best practices, that just came, even though the standards didn't change, but they wanted us to look at certain things a little bit more closely, then we just do it. So I don't really have a a definite answer for you, but it's all based on what's coming down to us and things that we have to enhance.
Great, thank you. And then just a quick thing about the literacy program. So this is the first year that it's really in play, correct?
Yep, correct.
Have you gotten any feedback yet on how they're
Yes.
working out?
So we have the program, so when publishers publish, they give you so much, and that's their job, right? And then it's the district's job to go through it, and the educators, our staff to say what's really matching our standards, and sometimes programs are not based out of New York, so you also have to look at that, that standards could be different. So the feedback's been great. It's been a lot of resources, so we're trying to help now as we write our curriculum to just hone in on, what's the most important for our students, using all of those different areas that I shared with you.
Thank you.
But
and thank you.
it's really hitting all of the pieces that we need.
Perfect, good. Thank you very much.
You got it.
I want to thank you, Dr. Rinaldi, and I noticed Dr. Biscari had to go in for surgery and not be here tonight just to avoid doing this presentation. So it is a lot of work that's been done. Having been the co-chair of the Program Review Committee for 10 years when I was as an assistant superintendent, I can attest to the hard work that's done by all the teachers and administrators on this committee over the years. A former co-chair of the Program Review Committee is now a board member sitting a few seats down, Mr. Vizzo, back when him and Mr. Coletti were co-chairing the secondary program review many years ago. It has certainly changed dramatically over the course of years of all the things that have gone on. And regardless of whatever our changes are coming up for next year, the state, as Ms. Ruffley indicated, the state always throws us a curveball. While we think 5 years we'll look at something, there's always inevitably something that comes along. And that's where, when, as taxpayers in the community, residents and parents look at this, and board members, those are those unfunded mandates that sometimes hit us that cause the disruption in our educational budgets as we move forward. And this year will be no exception. As we have literacy being done this year, you're piloting math, which is next year, and then the science standards are changing as well. So all of your work in trying to keep all these things going on at the same time has been very admirable, and we thank you and all the members of the committee that have been involved in these changes.
Thank you.
I have one question. Sue, I have a question.
Please.
So I have a young niece, and she started to refer to ChatGPT as my mind. Have you thought through how you're going to deal with the ability to generate college-level writing, college-level math at any stage, even young niece's stage, right? Is that how, I guess, it's a very unusual situation we are in now when it comes to education, and it happens at college level, happens at every level as far as I can figure out. But I was frankly a little amazed at my nieces. She will just go to it for everything, right? And she's quite young, she's 12. Have you thought through how you're going to deal with that?
So I work closely with Deidre Rubenstrunk, obviously, and she has many things in place. We have our tech coaches also that support us in anything that we do. So we're trying to teach students how to use these technologies in any capacity that they can, but using it the right way. So we know these things are going to come, right? Even when I was a child, you were a child, there must have been something different that, you know, we had, that, like we had Spark Notes, there's different things that were not the same as AI, but some qualities like that. So there's always things that come, that the children get ahead of, and they understand. The few things about AI that I can speak to, you would still have to know what to ask for and what to search for and what to say to AI for them to even gather the information for you. So that's one of the tools that one of the ways that we try to educate our students that this is a tool, but it's not everything, right? It's not all of your experience and all that you're learning in school. It's something that should support your learning. So I know Ms. Rubenstrunk can speak even more to that piece, but we work hand in hand in what that looks like for our students.
So, not to sound like a Luddite, but now it will sound like a Luddite. It is bad, as far as I can see, right? Just uniformly negative, the impact. And Stan may want to kick in here, but it's just uniformly negative, this particular type of technology on learning. And it makes it really impossible to set homework. All the homework can be done by computer. It's just a huge change, and like I thought it was just more or less restricted to high school students and college students, but it's now clearly not. And I feel like that's going to involve fairly big changes in how you deal with the students. In particular, it's almost pointless giving homework in this kind of setting.
Well, you still have to, if you're talking through, let's say, math homework, they still have to show their work and show their thinking. So there's still ways, I understand what you're saying, I do. But there's ways that we can use AI to enhance their learning. It's not, we try not to look at it as 100% negative, but ways that they can, it's another tool that they can use to support their learning.
Just to add one sentence, I totally agree with that. I have positive view of that. That's a tool that can help improve our life.
So the reason why I've become a bit, well, first of all, I love AI, right? Don't get me wrong. I mean, if I need to write something, I just say, write this for me, and then I use that as a starting point. I mean, I'm not learning how to write. I already write well, right? I feel like there's, I'm struggling for the words here. Maybe I should put it into AI to ask for it. But the things you said, you could just say to AI, well, give me prompts to approach this. And the same with the math. I mean, you say we've got to show all the working. You just tell it, show me all the working. Right? It's not like a calculator. It will go through in excruciating detail all the logic that it required to get to a certain point.
I think that's also part of the point what Dr. Viscari has brought up in several meetings about what we're trying to do in our own school district here is creating assessments that are reflective of the work that the teachers are doing. Like you said, you can go to a computer, just go home tonight and start talking about something in front of Alexa, or if you have Siri, and then go to your computer and see what comes up. You'll see that someone thinks that no one's listening. Someone's listening. The computers are listening to some of these things. But I think the symbol in Chinese for opportunity and danger is the same symbol. And I think we have to take into account that there may be a possibility that there are things that we have to be cautious with about this. But at the same time, we also should be looking at seeing what opportunities there will be there for the students in the future. They're certainly going to go into careers, as we always say, that are going to use these tools as they come out of high school and college and start going into the workforce. So what is difficult for us is that we've been very reliant and very the people we just honored this evening as an example, the professional development we're doing in this district, to try to train our teachers in the new way that these tools can be used. Because for many of the teachers we have, none of this existed when they were going through college. So that's where we're very lucky that we have the people on and staff that can do this. But we're all facing the same problem. You at the college level, certainly the elementary and secondary schools in this system, and parents at home. You know, I witnessed my own son one night blurting out his homework assignment to the computer, and it was giving him the answers, and he was just writing them down. Like, you know, it's a tool, but they've got to learn how to use it appropriately. In thinking about students with special needs, there's tremendous opportunities there for so many of our students who have issues maybe articulating or coming up with ideas and presenting it. They can get some of the ideas brainstormed out there, but putting it together in a cohesive fashion is sometimes difficult for someone. Another great resource for us. So I think it's about any tool we get that comes out. Years ago, when calculators first, the handheld calculators came out, people were resistant to actually using it. The Regents actually banned them at one point. You couldn't even use them on the Regents exams. Now they're used very frequently. So, and there's a balance to all of this, and that's certainly one of the topics I think we're going to talk a little bit further down on the agenda about using these things in balance. We're not putting students in front of computers and having them learn. If that's the case, then why do we have all the wonderful teachers and administrators in our district that teach children on a daily basis? Why do we have college professors like yourself out there that are giving the opportunities to students to learn in different ways? So I hope to God we never get to a point where we eliminate the human factor in our educational system, that we constantly use that. But we also have to make sure that those individuals who are doing that are trained appropriately in some of these resources, that they know how to use them and how to guide children effectively as they move forward for jobs that we right now probably don't even exist yet, that we can't even predict.
So one of the things that has increased my Ludditeness on this is there's fabulous math, online math teaching programs, you know, Khan Academy and 3 Blue, 1 Brown. These are fabulous, like, things that I never understood. I would go on there and I would get a wonderful explanation for how the things are, right? If you look at NAEP math scores, they've declined pretty steadily over the last 10 years, right? So at the same time we've brought on all these electronic resources, which are just fabulous, right? These are the best teachers imaginable, right? And everybody has access to them. The actual performance on standardized testing has gone down.
But not in 3 Village. Let's clarify. So for most of the country, yes. And Stanley did an analysis on our SAT scores, right? Yes, yeah, we've done quite well here. Thank goodness.
But nonetheless, overall, they've been at best neutral, right? And these are things that seem just, you know, incredible for somebody who grew up with really some terrible textbooks. And I think that what you said is right, that the personal aspect of it, doing things in person, having to use a pencil and a piece of paper, those things drive learning much better than electronic anything, right? And I don't think that's going to change. I think AI is really not going to help that in any meaningful way. That's my sense of it, okay? And so I know Sherry should kick in here because there's a range of views. If you were saying, look, we need to teach everybody linear algebra, right? Because that's the math that underlies these things, right? Sure, I agree with that, and that leads to jobs and so forth. I agree with that. I'm not sure that introducing much tech into teaching, I think there's an unconvincing case here that introducing tech into teaching is helping. I think it's a very personal thing. I think it's the social interaction between the teacher and the student, and that's just vastly more effective than any kind of electronic process.
Quick sentence.
No, go on.
Standardized test has been developed many years ago, and that doesn't develop over what's been happening in the technology. So I don't think we should use a score to judge what we learn or not. The career has this opportunity for our kids. If we limit their access to this newly developed technology, we're putting our kids at disadvantage compared to all other kids nationwide.
Okay, so to be clear, I'm not saying we shouldn't explain what it is and how it works. I'm not saying that. I'm saying when you do traditional tasks like English and math, that we should be very careful to try to not rely on those in any meaningful way, right? And then the other thing, now that we're on this topic, because this has become a hobby horse of mine, the remote teaching, right? I heard you saying, well, I think it was probably at the council meeting, that, look, we should teach about remote teaching or we get them used to. Remote teaching is a disaster from my perspective, right? I get students who have gone through remote teaching courses, they've learned almost nothing, okay? Now you could say, well, we should prepare them to learn almost nothing or prepare them to learn more, right? But really we should just avoid remote teaching at all costs and tell them, look, when you go to look for colleges, make sure that they don't do any remote teaching, right? I mean, that's the way I would talk to them. I would tell them, find out how many classes are being taught remotely and go to the college that does the least number of those classes.
So what I would say, just as an affirmation for anyone that's sitting in the audience as parents or our community members, our administrators observe teachers throughout our district. So I can assure you that our teachers aren't necessarily teaching from a computer screen every single day. There's a lot of personal...
No, I understand
Yeah,
that.
so we're
I'm not
very
suggesting
lucky
that.
that way. And all the classrooms I've been in this year, and I've been into over 25 for formal observations on teachers, I can assure you that that personal touch is there. And we're very lucky to have those educators in those rooms that do that. The same is true with, even mental health supports. You can go online for some of the mental health supports and health supports. But we've committed ourselves in this district to the number of social workers, psychologists, guidance counselors we have to make sure that we have that personal approach with all of our students. I don't think, in my opinion, we should ever get away from that. But as I said before, it is a balance. And I do agree with Dr. Lee's piece that we have to be prepared to train our students for a world that they're going into, that we have no idea what they may be going into or may be coming about. And my point about making that statement about understanding, teaching about remote learning, the fact of the matter is the largest college in the United States at this point is the University of Phoenix that has over 500,000 students. The largest on-campus school in the United States is Arizona, and it has 100,000 students on its campus. So the online learning world has excelled, whether good, bad, or indifferent. Some of it became a necessity because of COVID, but the cat's sort of out of the bag now, like how do we go back? And I think there's great opportunity there too to learn how this, but I want to make sure, especially in my role as superintendent, that we're training our students for a world that they're going into. Even if they have the experience of taking an online class, not because we have to, because we're home because of a virus or something, because we need to show them that this might be an expectation at any level. And I don't disagree with it. If the colleges start getting rid of it, then great, then we'll go back. Mm-hmm. But even in the corporate world, there's a lot of online learning, professional development that occurs. Many of our teachers take online learning programs as it stands now from universities all over the world. So we've been very lucky that way. So it's something that I'm not saying we have to agree with it, but I think we have to understand it and sort of embrace it in some capacity.
Indeed, and I think that's the beauty of the partnership that we encourage. It's there, right? It's there whether we like it or not, but with strong teachers and strong families to create the guardrails and the digital citizenship and the appropriateness and the beauty of creativity and thinking, hopefully we get through.
Yes, so I think that teaching and learning are both very social, people-orientated things. Mm-hmm. I think that's what we need to focus on, and that really seems very resistant to any new technology, because the technology now is just unbelievable, and yet I don't really think it's helping a whole lot. And I'm not.
You're both right. You're both right.
It is intrinsically interesting, right? And so I understand why people want to study it. I understand why people want to get on top of it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying for basic skills, which is most skills that you're going to learn in primary and secondary, that they're probably not going to help much.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank you, Dr.
perspective.
Waldy.
Thank you very much. All right. Definitely not generated by AI. We have some budget information from Mr. Carlson.
Nice, thanks. Well, it's not going to be quite so entertaining as Dr. Rinaldi, however. So we really start budget workshops with the board in March. But this kind of sets the stage for it, what our tax cap is, and a few of the pieces of information that we need to know in order to start building the budget. And we've gone over these things with the Budget Advisory Committee. We've been working with the BAC since late October. So first thing, of course, is the tax cap calculation, what it is, and that tells us how much money, other than state aid, we'll have to work with next year. Now, this first slide, this is the actual calculation as determined by the New York State Comptroller's Office. So when we plug in our numbers to this, it comes out looking like this. So I'll go through these, explain each line what it is and how it impacts, where the number comes from and how it impacts us. So I'll start in the top right, is the, for the coming up year's tax cap, we start with our current year tax levy, right? So on the top right, where it says prior year tax levy, that's the current year we're in now, right? So that's $174,136,272. And I put what our tax cap calculation was from a year ago next to it. So next line down is tax-based growth factor. That is new property, new additions, construction in the district. It's not changes in assessed value, like if somebody grieved their taxes or anything like that. This is new property that's being, or structures that are being taxed. That number cannot be less than zero. As you see, last year it was zero, meaning no increase for that. This year it's a 0.13% increase. So, and the exact order that these have to go was on the slide before. So that 0.13% gets added to the prior year tax levy. Next line down, prior year pilot. Pilot is payment in lieu of taxes. So typically, it would be like, let's say, a corporation that's in the district maybe does an addition onto their building. Maybe they're expanding their business, they put an addition on, and in lieu of getting an increase in their property taxes, the town's industrial development agency makes a deal with them and says, you won't get a tax increase for 8 years, or whatever length of time. And in lieu of that, the IDA, the Industrial Development Agency, makes a payment to us, and it's called payment in lieu of taxes, to make up for that loss of tax revenue. Now, that's not additional money to the district. What that does is offset the tax levy that the rest of the property owners in the district have to pay. That's how it gets factored in here. So, so first where we are, we add the prior year pilot. We're going to get to coming up year pilot in a minute. Next line down, prior year capital tax levy. Now I'll explain what that means and how that number is calculated in a couple of minutes. That's the next slide. But you can see from last year, that's a subtraction, right? So it was 3.3 million last year. Current year, for next year it'll be 4.4 million. That number gets subtracted from where we are so far, and as I said, I'll explain where those numbers come from, because we're going to see coming up year's capital tax levy in a minute too. Now, the term capital tax levy, don't think that means a separate tax levy. It's all part of the tax levy. If it were me, I wouldn't have called it that, because some people then tend to think, oh, wait a second, is that in addition to the regular tax levy? No, it's not. It's part of the overall tax levy. So then those numbers all get combined. That's you see in the right column, adjusted prior year tax levy, 170.4 million. The next line down, levy growth factor, 2%. That's the 2% when you hear 2% tax cap. That's that number right there. That number cannot be more than 2%, but it can be 2%, but it can be less than 2%. It's based on the consumer price index. The one that's the term, there's a number of different consumer price indices, I guess. as determined by the Comptroller's Office for use in tax levy increases. So for, as you see, last year was 2%, this coming up year is 2%. So that gets added, that 2% gets added to that. Then pilot the upcoming year's pilot. So that's the $620,000 that's on there for this coming up year. Now, just so you know, the pilot, if you look at last year's, that 568,000, that's the same number that's in the 25-26 column for prior year. Those numbers have to be the same, even if it's an estimate. Whatever was used as an estimate last year for the coming up year has to be in that column the next year. So in fact, when I go on to the Comptroller's website and I input all the data to tell them, you know, what our tax cap or tax levy is expected to be next year and whether we conform with the cap, that number is already in there. I can't even change that. So that's pilot. And then add those together, it's called what's called the tax levy limit. Then exclusions. So what you see in last year, ERS, that's the Employees Retirement System. So for the New York State Employees Retirement System and New York State Teachers Retirement System, we pay, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes when we get to benefits, but we pay a percentage of salaries into that. It's called the employer contribution rate. If that percentage goes up by more than 2 percentage points, the amount that's more than 2% is an exclusion on our tax cap. So last year, the ERS rate went up, it was an aggregate of 2.1%. So the 0.1% piece was an exclusion on last year going into this year's tax cap, but going to next year, it's not at 2%, so that's not applicable for this coming up year. And then the next line after that is the capital tax levy for the upcoming year. And you can see it's going from 4.4 million to 7.1 million next year. I'll get to that in a second, but the reason for that is a reduction in building aid, which I'll explain in a minute. So when they all get combined together, you can see the maximum allowable tax levy, that's the term, is for next year $180,473,730, which is a 3.64% increase over this year's tax levy. That's with keeping capital projects the same as they are right now. We'll get to that right now. This is the capital tax levy. Where those numbers came from in the prior slide, this is how they're calculated. And I have the 3 years because for the tax cap from last year, it used the prior year tax levy, which was 23-24, the coming up year, 24-25. Now that number also, as you can see, from in the 24-25 column, capital tax levy 4.4 million, that's the same number that's in the 25-26 prior year. And again, same thing, that number cannot change from one year to the next. So what we have down for next year, bottom right, 7.1 million, well, depending on if we keep capital projects the same. Whatever number that is, though, for this year, that we're at 7.1 million there, that's the number that has to be used next year. Even though building aid, in the governor's proposal, that's an estimate. Everything in building aid so far is still an estimate. Even when the state budget is done in April, and they say, that's it, state budget's done, here's your state aid for next year, it's still an estimate. It doesn't matter what we actually get, this is the number we have to use. We have to use it now, and we have to use it next year for when we do the prior year. So now I'll go through and explain these. So debt service, top line, that's our bond payments. We have a number of outstanding bonds. And this is what we pay in those bond payments, principal and interest. And you can see from the current year, which is the middle column, to next year, it's going down by a little over $900,000. The reason for the reduction is we've just now paid off, actually March 1st is the last payment, for an energy performance contract that we did some years ago. So we have the last payment of that. That's why we see the reduction in next year's debt service. Capital projects, we're keeping the same as of right now. Our recommendation would be to not lower the capital projects because we always need work on our buildings. Our buildings are getting old. Our youngest building is over 50 years old. They always need work. We've seen in the last couple of years, we saw last year with, or a year and a half ago now, with Setauket, the roof over the auditorium, they always need work. So our recommendation is to keep that, and really what we'd like to do over time is build that back up. Prior to the budget failing in the 21-22 year, that line was at $6.6 million. So then with the budget failing, that number has to go to zero. So that's why it got reset, and now we're working on trying to rebuild it back up to where it was, and perhaps higher. The next, so the BOCES capital and the BOCES aid. So BOCES capital, that's our share of Eastern Suffolk BOCES capital projects in their budget. So we have to pay for their our share of their administration costs, regardless of whatever programs and services we subscribe to, or even if we send kids there or not. We pay over $1 million a year in BOCES administration fees. Even if we didn't send a single student there and we didn't get a single service from them, we'd still have to pay more than $1 million a year towards their administration cost. And part of that is this towards their capital costs. So that's using this calculation. The next line down is building aid. So you can see the building aid in 23-24, $10.6 million. Then last year went down to 9.6 million, next year down to 6 million. So the reason for that is we're on our 2007 bond, we got all 15 years through counting this year of the building aid on that bond. But we still have a few more years to go on the bond payments. As I've said before, when we discuss bonds, when we do capital projects or renovations through a bond, the building aid comes in over 15 years. The 2007 bond, some of that was a 15-year term bond, and some of it was a 20-year term bond. So that's why we still have a few years left on payments of it, but we've gotten all the aid in now this year. So we see that reduction in the building aid for next year, which what it winds up doing is it increases the tax cap. And then the last line on there is our share of what BOCES is getting in building aid. So when you put it all together, that's what it comes out to. Current year's capital tax levy, which really portion of the total tax levy, is 4.4 million, and next year 7.1 million. As I said, our recommendation would be to keep the capital where it is. Of course, if the capital projects line was lowered, that would lower the overall tax cap as well. So we don't have to decide that tonight. I do have to submit this to the comptroller's office by March 1st, but it doesn't lock the board into a decision. It might still show up that way when like Newsday puts out a report or something and they say because sometimes the comptroller's office doesn't, or Newsday doesn't get updated information from the comptroller's office once it's submitted as of March 1st. But again, March 1st is the deadline I have to submit what our intention is. Doesn't mean that's what you have to do. So unless you tell me different tonight, this is the way I will be submitting it to the comptroller's office. But again, not locked into anything. So now we talk about debt service. So current year, on the left side of the screen, 10.8 million, next year going down to 9.9 million. And then how much of that 9.9 million that we'll have in next year's debt service, here's the years when that will end up. So when we're here a year from now talking about the tax cap, debt service will go down by about $525,000. The $93,000, that's the we'll pay off the final amount on the bonding of the settlement for the Child Victims Act cases. 20, 30, 31, that minus $4,455,000, that's when we finish paying off the 2007 bond. So while we see now an increase to the tax cap, and it's like in 2030, that's going to be great news. 2031. Actually, that's going into the 2030-31 budget. So it'll be in the year 2030, 5 years from now, planning that budget, there'll be a reduction in debt service of $4,455,000, but not a reduction in building aid. So what I would recommend for whoever's here at the time is to at least do maybe two things with that. Put a chunk of that into increasing capital projects in the budget, and the rest of it may be lowering the tax cap. So it can be some of both. It's a lot of money in one shot to just lower the tax cap by. It's nice, but we really know the money is going to be needed in capital. So that would be the recommendation. Then 2032, 33, that reduction of $4,275,000, that's paying off the 2014 bond, because that whole bond was a 15-year term. And that year, we will see a corresponding reduction in building aid, because they had the building aid of 15 years, term of the bond, 15 years. And then 2034, 35, that's another energy performance contract that we did will end. Now, the other big piece of information that we once we have all it together helps us in figuring out what we can and can't do with the upcoming budget is the employee benefits section. So, and within that, the single biggest item is health insurance. Unfortunately, our medical costs, not just our health insurance, medical costs have skyrocketed, especially in the pharmaceutical end. There's a reason why every other commercial you see on TV is for pharmaceutical companies, because they know people are going to watch the commercial and they're going to say, I need that, and they're going to go to their doctor and say, I need a prescription of whatever, and they're going to get it, and it's expensive. It costs a lot of money. So our premiums are going up 12.7% next year. Now, we're not part of NYSHIP, which is New York State Health Insurance Plan, also known as Empire Plan, which most school districts on Long Island are, but even with, they saw the big increases last year and the year before. So the cost for Empire, or NYSHIP, is still higher than our cost, even with this increase that we're seeing coming up next year. And we're working on some things to try to lower costs. That's not going to have an impact on this coming up year, but long term. So for our health insurance, all of our employees that have health insurance contribute towards that. And the percentage that they pay towards insurance varies depending on what unit they're in. And for the most part, it's between 14% and 18%. We do have a couple of units that pay much more towards that, but those units have very few people that actually get health insurance. That's why I didn't want to skew it and say, between employees contribute between 14% and 50%, because there's very few at that higher end. The vast majority of our employees that have health insurance pay between 14 and 18% towards it. So now in actual dollars, the increase to next year is about $5 million based on our current staffing. We do all of this stuff based on what our current staffing is right now. This does not take into, when we start doing all the staffing, which Dr. Scanlon, Dr. Dabrowski, Dr. Muscari are having all the staffing meetings now with all of our directors and executive directors and building principals, as we figure out if there's a reduction in positions for whatever reason, then these numbers can come down if there's less people on health insurance. So what actually will go in the budget depends on what any staffing changes that are made. Also part of employee benefits is Social Security. Just like any other employer, we have to pay 7.65% of an employee's wages into Social Security, and that's up to wages of for 2025. That's up to wages of $176,100. Any wages earned beyond that, it's 1.45%. And the increase to next year, again, based with our current staffing, is about $350,000. Other benefits are workers' compensation, life insurance, unemployment, disability, dental, and those aren't changing very much, and the increase to next year is approximately $38,600. We're self-insured for both workers' compensation and unemployment. So now, the retirement system, that's the other big piece of benefits. Now, all of our employees that do belong to a retirement system, it's one of two. It's either the New York State Teachers Retirement System or the New York State Employees Retirement System. Certificated teachers, teaching assistants, and administrators are in TRS, and everyone else is ERS. It's mandated by state law that all full-time employees belong to the retirement system. All part-time employees, it's optional. It's up to them. we can't not let them. It's up to them. If they want to join, they can, but they're not required to. And as I mentioned before, the cost to the district for the retirement systems is a percentage of salaries. That percentage is known as I said, the employer contribution rate. Now, they do it a little differently, though. TRS, Teachers Retirement System, it's one rate for everybody. Now, there are six tiers in both of the retirement systems. Tier 1, well, before there were tiers, up to 1971, it was just the retirement system. And then in 1971, the state decided, we need to reel back those benefits some, so they can't change the existing people. So what they do is create a new tier. Say, okay, everybody that starts as of July 1st, 1971, we'll call them Tier 2, and everybody that was already here was Tier 1. And then in 1976, they added Tier 3, 1983 was Tier 4. And then from 1983 all the way up to 2010 was everybody was new that came in was Tier 4. And then Tier 5 started in 2010, and then quickly thereafter in 2012 was Tier 6, and that's where we are now. And each additional tier, the benefits are a little less, right? So when there are stories in the paper, like back in 2008, 2009, there were a lot of especially school superintendents that had started back in the 1960s. They had a lot of years in. All of their sick days counted towards calculating their pensions, and with these big numbers, and there was a lot of uproar. So it was like, well, we need to create a new tier. But it takes time for that to actually see some savings. But now it's been a while since Tier 5 started, as I said, 2010. So a lot more of our employees now are Tier 5 and Tier 6. But anyway, Tier 1, one TRS is one rate for all tiers. For this coming up year, it's 9.59%. This year, it was 10.11%. So the rate's going down a little bit, which is great. But based on current staffing, salaries will go up. So that's why there's still an increase in the cost. Now, some years, those rates go up. Some of the years, they go down. It would be nice if it went down. The years when it goes down a couple of percent is really nice. But, that's not this year. Employees' retirement system, they do it differently. Every tier has a different rate. And so the rates vary. The current year from 11 point, and now I'm only doing tiers 3 through 6 because we have no tier 1. We have no tier 1s in either system, and we have, I think, 2 Tier 2 people in the employees' retirement system. So I'm not even counting that. So it's between 11.4% and 17.9% this year, and next year it's increasing to between 12.9% and 19.6%. And when you combine both of those retirement systems, the increase to next year is approximately $426,000. This slide is, I went over this with the Budget Advisory Committee meeting a couple of meetings ago, and this updated a little bit since then because Teachers' Retirement System had originally gave an estimate for next year of between 9.5% and 10%. So I usually would take right in the middle. But then they came out subsequent to that meeting till before tonight and said use 9.59%. So I changed it. So when you add all those things together, the health insurance, the TRS, the ERS, the Social Security, and the other benefits, and this year, last year, and then the difference, it's about a little over a $6 million increase in our budget. And if you go back to our tax cap calculation, don't even really look at the bottom line numbers, because that includes the reduction in debt service. The tax cap actually gives us about $3.5 million more in money that can be used to fund our budget, not counting the capital piece of the levy. So before state aid, we have about $3.5 million more in tax revenue to use. And before we've even looked at anything else, we have $6 million increase in benefits. So that's the quandary that we're beginning our budget discussions with. So that's all I have for tonight, and of course, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Sure. Okay, I'll jump in. So I understand it's not your recommendation to lower the capital projects line, but do you have any sense of, let's say if that didn't say 3 million, it said 2 million, what that would do?
Yeah, it would be around 2.6, 2.7, something like that.
So it goes from 3.64 to 2.7?
Yeah, when I sit down and have my calculator, I can tell you exactly.
That's close.
Can't do that one in my head, sorry.
That's closer
Sorry.
to what it was last year.
Right, yes.
Who else?
I just had a clarification question, because I've been hearing this around. Can you just tell us the difference on why we would need to fund a capital projects line if we are doing a bond? So we have people that think because we might be doing a bond next year, that why do we need this extra money in the budget, which should be zero?
Sure. If the bond was this past October and it passed, be a different story. We don't know that it's going to pass. If I knew it was going to pass, I'd be more comfortable with saying, yeah, sure, lower the capital projects because we have the bond money coming. But not knowing that, that's what I'm worried about.
But regardless, we still need some sort of money in that capital projects
Yes.
line because of things that come up every single year. Because with the bond, that is for specific projects, not for things that come up
Right,
on a yearly basis.
right,
Like a ceiling at Situate School.
exactly.
Dr. McKinnon?
Just another clarification question. The workers' comp life unemployables, we're self-insured, is that how I understood you to say?
That's correct, yes, for both workers' compensation and unemployment.
And so what does that mean exactly? These are just your costs for last year that you're covering, or what?
Yeah, so what we do with, workers' compensation, let's take that one first. That's a bigger one than unemployment. So if you're an employer, you have to buy workers' compensation insurance for your employees. There are very few employers that can self-insure. We can. So we do because we can, and it saves money. As an employer, when you buy into, like, let's say, for instance, the state insurance fund for workers' compensation, it's not like when we have health, it's not different than health insurance, all right? Like we have health insurance, all right? So we pay whatever we pay towards health insurance for a year, and something happens and somebody has $800,000 a year in medical costs, it's covered. They don't have to make up the difference, their insurance. That's the whole idea of everybody pool the money together, but that's not how workers' comp works. If you, as an employer, whatever money you paid in to workers' comp, and by the way, this works same for unemployment, whatever you paid in towards your workers' comp and unemployment, if your employees collect more than that, they're going to charge you for the difference. Not the employees, the state will charge you for the difference. So you'll always pay at a minimum what your employees actually collect in benefits, either workers' compensation or unemployment. And if you had no claims or very few claims, you're still paying in. You'll actually pay in more because you still have to pay them. In our case, because we self-insure for both workers' compensation and unemployment. So we only pay for actual claims. So we know every year there's going to be some workers' compensation claims, and some of them last years. It's not just brand-new claims for the year. There are always going to be workers' compensation claims. There are always going to be some unemployment claims. We don't have a whole lot in unemployment. It's not very much money, but we do have some. And we do have a reserve for workers' compensation, and we have a reserve for unemployment insurance. Our goal is to really cover that year's costs in the budget. Because otherwise, if we just say, well, let's just pay it out of reserves, well, a couple of years goes by, and then the reserves are gone, and then we still have to pay for it. So we're not anticipating a cost increase in workers' comp, budget increase in workers' compensation. Unemployment, if we get to the point where we're accessing people, there's a chance that they go on unemployment if they're being accessed. So what we would do is for every position that's being accessed, so we lower the salary amount right, in the budget. We lower whatever that person's salary would have been. We lower the Social Security part for the 7.65% that we would pay in for their salary. We lower the retirement system line for the percentage of their salary. We lower health insurance because if they're no longer covered by health insurance, but we'll add to unemployment because they might collect unemployment. We don't know that yet. So by the way, the 2% on the capital projects would still come out to right about just a little over 3%. So it would take about, if we did $1.5 million, then it would be about 2.7%. I didn't figure it out, like I said, when I sit down, I can figure it out exactly, but it would be about that, yeah.
So sticking with that for a second and recognizing that we want to be partners in this process, if we were to say tonight, I don't know whether there's enough consensus here, but if we were to say tonight, yeah, we would like to knock that down to 2 million, does that help you or hurt you?
Jeff's gonna
Help in
hate
what
that
way?
suggestion.
In a global way, in your process?
I mean, listen, the more that's in the capital projects, I mean, the more comfortable I'd be, of course. But I understand what it means. To see a tax increase of more than 3%, I understand that. If you wanted to get that tax levy increase down to 2.9% or whatever, that's certainly understandable. That's why we wanted to bring this to you tonight and to talk about it, to at least, you don't have to make a decision tonight, but at least get you thinking about it and see if that's something you wanted to do. So, I'm not gonna have a temper tantrum if you say we're lowering it.
You're
So
not?
If that's what the question was, yeah,
Okay.
no, I won't.
Oh, okay.
I have another
Wait till I get in my
clarification
car.
question. So, the rates on the retirement, I understand this is very complicated because of the tiers, right, to understand what the rate changes mean. But whenever you say self-insured or we're paying money to the state, I worry about future liability. So what is the potential things that do we face any dramatically increased liability for the retirement? New York State is losing people. Let's put it another way. Losing people, their tax base is declining. That makes it, in most situations where that's happening, that makes it much harder to cover public service employment, retirement funds, right? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, would we be facing a potential much larger number?
I don't think so. So we'll be seeing a lot of retirements coming up soon, right? So on the one hand, and not just Three Village. So there will be a lot more retirees collecting. So on that side, yeah, but for the most part, they'll all be replaced. So you'll have unlike Social Security, where, if you look at, back in 1940, whatever the number was, you had 5 people paying into Social Security for everyone that was collecting, or whatever the number was. And now you have, 2 people collecting for everyone paying, or whatever it is. It really wouldn't work that way with this. And so, not to be morbid about it, but as the Tier 1 and Tier 2 people die off, they're the ones with the richest pensions, comparatively speaking. Take myself, I'm at the very end of the baby boomers, right? I was born in 1963. So as you have pretty much all of the baby boomers are all retired now, including myself. But so as they, again, not to be morbid, but as they die off, it's a lot of people that are collecting retirement pensions that will cease to be collecting pensions, and there'll still be a lot of people paying in. I'm hopeful. By the way, I didn't put it in here, but there was a time way back in 1980 80s into the 90s, maybe even, where that rate, what's now 9.959% for next year for TRS, was 22, 23%. It used to be much higher. But then, of course, it got real low around the year 2000, 2001, because a lot of what drives the rates is not just how many people are paying in, bless you, how many people are collecting, but they invest their money. I mean, there's billions and billions of dollars in both of these pension funds, and they have investments. And how well the stock market does drives what the contribution rate is. So back in the early 2000s, the rate on TRS got down to zero. We didn't have to contribute at all. Not to pay anything, because they made so much money in the stock market. Because if you remember back, around late 1999, 2000, 2001, the stock market was just boom. The economy was booming. So I mean, I don't know 10 years from now, but I don't think it'll be much more than this. It kind of has leveled off in the 10% range. For tier, like I said, it's been down to zero, it's been up to 23%, it's been everywhere in between. But it's, in the past few years, it's leveled off in the 9 to 13% range. So hopefully that will stay long-term, at least. It's much better for budgeting if it's not that huge increases. It's nice when it goes down, but it's not so nice when it goes way up.
One of the factors that we have to be careful with, and as the BAC has been looking at this, when we try to do comparisons of district to district, the scattergram that we provided to the board, we gave you the past 5 years so you could see, as particularly the teaching staff here has been going through, we have a large portion of our teaching staff that's at the highest end of their experience in years. So they're closer to the retirement age, the vast majority of our teachers, than are newer. And some of those other districts that people like to compare us to because, they're cheaper than Three Village, it's because if you look at their teaching staff, again, the majority of our budget is for salaries, and particularly teaching salaries. We are a school system, not anything else. So we pay for people to teach students in classrooms. Their staff is much younger, on the younger end of the system, newer, and therefore cheaper, and that's why their budgets are lower. So we are going to start seeing, as Mr. Carlson just described, we have 55% of our teaching staff right now at MA 60 and 28 to 29 years of experience. That's very top heavy. So as that starts to retire, that's where that cost savings is going to occur. That's point number one. Point number two, the average person sitting in the room here probably not paying attention to anything going on in the world with the state, or people watching on this program, watching our board meeting online. If you have issues with the state budgets, be reminded that our current budget, as all school districts, we have caps for reserves in the 4% range. The state is sitting on a 15% reserve in their budget. So while districts are capped at 4, the state's sitting on 15. So while the worry, as you indicated, that people leaving the state, population changing, Florida, Texas are bigger than New York now. When I was a kid, New York was number 1. We're now 4. We're probably going to drop to 5 or 6 very shortly in the next census, if not lower. The state in and of itself is sitting on reserves, maybe in anticipation of that. I'd like to hope that's their plan, but I don't. Who knows what they're sitting on that amount of money for? But that's all of us paying taxes going up there, and it's sitting in reserves. And if you want to talk to your area politicians about how much of your tax dollars you're getting back on Long Island compared to what we're helping fund 3/4 of the state from what we're doing here. So we're not getting the same bang for our buck. I've heard everything from 17 cents on the dollar to 27 cents on the dollar of what we get as a return for what we give to the state for our purposes and taxes.
No, the thing is, I didn't really fully understand how the tax system, the retirement system works. It's sort of like a managed 401k in a way. It's not like a lot of these municipal retirement funds, which are pay as you go, or like Social Security. So we're not. What you're saying, there's a big capital buffer, basically.
One nice thing about the New York State. By the way, I think $1.5 million on capital comes out to 2.79%. But I have to, like I said, I have to double check that when I get to my calculator. But I think 2.79%. But
Going to be
Okay, but these retirement systems are fully funded. So not like Social Security where it's, there is enough in the retirement system. So theoretically, if everything were to end today, no more schools, no more public employees in New York State, it all ends today, everybody's gone, and there's enough money there to pay out the pensions that they have in place. So it's not operating on a shoestring kind of thing.
Can I just add one thing? I want to add one thing. I mean, we have a lot this year with our budget. You know, the community, it's a lot in our pockets, you know, all of us. So I'm looking at the tax levy, and I'm listening to what you're saying, then all of a sudden you're saying, oh, it's 3%. Last year we had 2.84. Now, if we keep it this way at 3 million, we're going to go up to 3.64. That's almost a 1.0 jump. I wouldn't be able to sleep with that tonight, so I'm going to make it where I would say I would like to see it at 1.5 in order to bring that below that 3%. At least, and you just said, hopefully the 2.79, because then it'll even be a little lower than what we had last year, correct?
Yep.
Well, that's
So-
what,
So,
that,
shall I consider that a motion?
I would like to make that a motion if we have 4 votes.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Can I
Okay.
discuss something too before the voting on that motion?
Sure.
So the
Okay, well, we got a motion on the table, we gotta walk it over here. Hold on, hold that thought. Okay,
so this difference in benefits, the $6 million that we're sorry,
we
no.
gotta walk through the motion,
Oh
sorry.
my gosh.
That's okay, that's okay. All right, so we have our first, we have our second, all in favor of knocking it down to 1.5 from 3 million.
Can I ask a clarification
No,
question?
we have to call the vote.
No, I'll vote for that.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you got your 4.
Can I ask my clarification question now?
I guess Stan gets to go first,
Oh,
and
Stan,
then you
sorry,
get to go.
Stan.
So this, I guess we already voted on it, but the capital budgets, whether it's 3 million or 2 million or 1.5 million, none of that can be put towards paying that $6 million difference that we need to make
That's
up.
correct.
right?
Correct.
That's
Capital
only
money
going
can
towards
only be used for
projects.
capital.
All right,
Right.
so we still need to find a way to get, pay for that full 6 million. We don't have control over any
Yes.
of that. Okay.
And in a bit of good news, I was wrong, it's not 2.79, it's 2.78. So. So, yeah, but good point. The capital money, the reason it's excluded from the rest of the tax cap calculation is because when the tax cap first went into effect, the state legislature at least had the good sense to say, well, they didn't want school districts to have to choose between educating kids and taking care of the buildings. So that's why it's done separately. That's part of the reason. But part of the reason too is like things like debt service, right? So a bond referendum, the referendum is the voters approve the bond. So when the voters approve a bond, they're approving the projects themselves and the borrowing of the money and the payment back of that money. So that's why there's already voter approval on paying that. So that's why that's not subject to the tax cap, the 2% part of the tax cap. So that money can't be used for anything else.
Understood. Okay, Dr. McKinnon?
Well, you're going to hate this question too. We're putting this on top of an 8% increase, or at least mine was, I think, was 8.2% increase that people saw for their actual taxes, right? Their property taxes, right? Do you want to comment on that?
Well, sure. So our tax levy from last year to this year from last year's went up to 2.84%, 2.84%. That's what we raised the tax levy by. That's how much more money we're getting in property taxes this year. How that gets broken down is a different story. So if anybody paid more than that, that means somebody paid less than that. So now a couple of things happened. One was there was a change to the senior citizen limited income exemption by increasing the dollar amounts to qualify for that exemption, and remember, that's the whole sliding scale. So that by creating a increased exemption for the people that got that, that meant for whatever they saved, everybody else had to pay for that. So that increased everybody's tax. The average, let's say, in Three Village, school tax bill went up by about $42 because of that. But then something else happened. The STAR program, right? The STAR is a New York State school tax reduction. Now, some people don't qualify because they make too much money. Some people don't qualify on a house they have here, because you only get it on your primary residence. So if you own more than one house or you own a rental house, you don't get it on that. And then some people get a check directly from New York State for that instead of a deduction on their taxes. Some get the check directly, some get the deduction on their taxes. Either way, if you get the check directly, or if you have that deducted from your tax bill, the state lowered the amount that they're paying for STAR this year compared to last year. So if everything else stayed exactly where it was, your tax bill would have went up because of that, because they're paying less than they were. So that means your tax bill had to go up to cover the reduced amount that they're paying. So you had that to it. And then another thing happened. So there was a mistake made I believe it was in the assessor's office, when we had a call with them, they said they made a mistake on when they did exemptions on some Stony Brook University property. And they erroneously were going to charge too much of the school taxes to them. There are some properties at Stony Brook University that are subject to property taxes. Too much was going to get charged to them. Somehow, they caught the mistake before those bills went out, but they didn't catch the mistake in time for the homeowners' bills to go out. So what that meant a year ago was your school tax bill was too low. Now, not low enough where you'd open your tax bill and say, whoa, what's going on? Why did my taxes go down so much? Yeah, it averaged about $185 per homeowner. So with the 2.484% increase, you would have still seen an increase in your taxes, just $185 less than it should have been. So now this year, when the tax bills just went out, 2 months ago, they're correct for this year, but it makes the increase seem like more because last year's was lower than it should have been. So we had a call with the tax receiver's office, and you may have seen the letter that Dr. Scanlon sent out back then in December. And now I knew when we were talking with them, I knew the answer to the question, but I wanted to hear him say it. I said, well, are you going to send out revised tax bills for last year? And they said, no, it's too late to do that. So okay, I knew that, but I wanted to make sure of that. And then I said, well, okay, well, now, by the way, you add all that up, the $185 each, it adds up to about $2.4 million. So I said, well, okay, well, who's on the hook for that $2.4 million? And they said, well, the town is. So the good news for Three Village School District residents is collectively you paid $2.4 million less last year than you should have. The bad news for town of Brookhaven residents that don't live in Three Village is they had to make up for it. So anyway, so it made this year's increase seem like more than, you know, when you have the 2.84% increase, plus the senior citizen exemption, plus where the state's paying less in the STAR program, plus you had the more of an increase from last year because of the mistake made by the town of Brookhaven. It added up to maybe 5.5 for some. I think on average it came out to about 5.5 for a lot of people, and maybe if yours was 8 or whatever. But so you add all those things together. Bottom line, though, is what we're getting is 2.84% more than what we got last year in tax levy. And then when you throw in the assessed values, you know, when somebody agrees their taxes, right? Somebody agrees their taxes and they get a lowered assessment. So their taxes go down, but what happens? Well, everybody else's goes up a little bit. So that's why I use the example, you know, 10 people go out to a restaurant, the bill comes and it's $300, and you say, okay, we'll pay $30 each. And then someone says, well, wait a second, I had a, whatever, I had a bowl of soup and a glass of water, I shouldn't pay $30. So, okay, they'll pay less. Well, you only pay $10. Well, that doesn't mean the restaurant gets $20 less. It means everyone else has to pay a little more. Same thing happens with grieving taxes. Somebody gets their assessment lowered, their taxes go down, everyone else's goes up a little bit.
What is the district doing to
We don't take any questions from the audience, I'm sorry. Thank you. You're welcome to stay after and if you have any questions. So, seeing no other questions about the budget, we're going to move on. Thank you, Mr. Carlson, we appreciate it.
Sue, I just have a question. How many people, was there any no's or it was a 6-0?
No, so we had 1, 2, 3, 4, David was 4. Who was a no on cutting it from 3 million down to 1.5? Were you a yes?
You're
So
right.
you're yes?
Yes.
And you were a no. So Stan was your only no.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Thanks. Okay, moving on now to items for board discussion. We begin with A, Chromebooks. Dr. Scanlon.
So actually, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Back if he wants to discuss his questions that came up.
Sure. So this is it's actually related to some of the discussion I think David was talking about earlier in terms of how we're using technology, Chromebooks, ed tech within our schools. So a lot of these is like just a lot of thoughts I have that I want to express. Maybe have some discussion too. So years ago, when kids had access to a computer at home, they would you'd think, oh, they're getting ahead. They're learning all this tech now. Whereas I think things have shifted now where it's the opposite. It's almost like kids who have more screen time restrictions seem to get an advantage later on when they're going into school. In my mind, the last thing that young children would need in the current world is more screen time, right? And so I hope that when the district is introducing technology in the classroom, this is sort of done intentionally and not just other districts are doing it, or we have a nice grant that allows us to do it, and therefore we should do it. It should really be as a supplement to the education, right? And so parents may sometimes get the impression that, for example, if you have like a Chromebook that gets sent home over a midwinter break, that the teacher's telling you that the kids should be using the Chromebook, right? Similarly, if there's teachers in early elementary classrooms, they might get the impression that if our district is buying Chromebooks and paying for software, that they really should be using them throughout the year. Right. In my mind, this is slightly backwards, right? Of course, if the teacher sees an advantage in using a certain piece of software, that's great, right? But it's not like we're encouraging them that you need more tech as you're going through the education process, especially in early elementary. So I know that there are some districts that have several hours a day of screen time doing basically gamified learning. And I even heard this discussion, there's like this dystopian future where you just have large rooms with minimal adult supervision and the kids are just on computers all day learning things. And of course, I would prefer to avoid this. I think that a lot of people would, right? So it's basically coming down to what was said earlier, that it's more effective to have teacher time, have more teacher time, and have less screen time. And so Chromebooks, they're not free, right? We're paying for them. The software, EdTech, is not free. I do worry that EdTech is not really shown to be effective in many cases. So in our own district, we'd had reading software years ago that was basically doing the Lucy Calkins literacy curriculum. It had leveled reading. You had look at the picture and guess the word, and there was patterns and sentence structure throughout the book, right? And then of course all this controversy came up, and science of reading became more popular. There's more emphasis on phonics. And when I look up this software company, they just rebranded. They changed their name, and now their whole website is all about science of reading. Right? So on the one hand, this is good. Hopefully, they've seen the light and improved their product. But I think probably the more honest case is they will sell us whatever we're willing to pay them, right? And they're for-profit companies, and that's their primary motivator. There's other products. So there's like Prodigy, which is a math game that I think we use in our district, right? A few years ago, they were the target of a FTC complaint from Fair Play, which is a child advocacy nonprofit. And so they've made some changes to the software since. But what was the complaint, right? It's a software that's using a freemium model, so it sounds like a free math learning game, right? That sounds good. But the software would aggressively upsell to students to get them to try to play at home, which again was free. but then they were free to advertise them to buy a membership. And if you bought a membership, then you get this cooler character that floated on the cloud, and compared with your friend, your friends would see this, right? And then they'd have some pressure to spend money on the software. And in these types of software, there was complaints that students spent little time on math, and they were more busy doing things like shopping, digging for bones, or looking at their pets, right? They had research studies, right, funded internally, that's showing you how effective the game was at teaching math. So that I have a lot of concern for this. So the point is not, any one specific piece of software, but the sort of general trend where tech is getting into our schools, and it's replacing time with the teachers. And especially in early elementary, I would think it's best to minimize time on screens. And so beyond ed tech, the next thing is AI, and we talked about this a little bit too, right? And I saw some of this at the NYSBA convention, where you had different companies advertising, look, their product has AI, and how great this is for education. And I think we should be very mindful of how we use this, even if they're free, right? I worry that there's a real danger using AI that we're losing critical thinking skills, right? These are going to be eroded even further, where you can outsource the thinking to ChatGPT or whatever product has AI embedded in it. From a financial standpoint, I mean, we could ask the question, are one-to-one Chromebooks, are these essential in early elementary? Would it be worth analyzing if there's any potential savings? And this includes things like the software that goes on them, things like Go Guardian monitoring that our district sort of does. And I don't really expect immediate answers on this, but I think we should have a healthy skepticism of tech and AI within our schools.
So I don't disagree with you, but having been the Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services 10 years here, I've witnessed the changeover, and this is my 34th year in education, of going from textbooks to the technology. So I don't think we should be myopic in our approach about how we view this. The technology has a place, and I can assure you and all the rest of the board members here that particularly our primary teachers are not using Chromebooks on a daily basis or in every single lesson. They're also not sitting idly in chairs with hearing lectures from teachers. They're actively engaged in lessons. If you've ever been around a kindergartner, whether you want them to be actively engaged or not, they're engaged. Their minds are moving a mile a minute with a million questions, and that's a good thing. But there's a reality that we also have to face too here. We shouldn't vilify the technology because of studies that are being done about certain things. What also should be done in the home compared to the school, yes, the school can limit it as much as we can. We also have a technology committee that actually has policies and procedures in place for that. But the home environment, we have no control over. And if Ms. Rubenstrunk is not here tonight, if she would tell you, we actually do a lot of analysis on when we have the Chromebooks at home, when students are on. And to the surprise of some families, we contact them that your child is on the Chromebook at 12 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning. That is a parenting issue more than the school's issue at that point in time. If you're going to bed, assuming your child is going to bed, and whether it's a Chromebook or their cell phone, some type of downtime should occur for those devices. The one thing I will tell you that is the unfortunate circumstance with some of the textbook companies, yes, you're correct, they've seen this as a new way of making money. However, and giving you an example, when we moved to Discovery Tech Book for the district, when we had to replace our science series in the elementary level, the cost of the books compared to what we did with Discovery Tech Book, it saved the district $475,000 over the course of a 6-year contract. That's the reality of what we're dealing with now, with the budgets being what they are. The books themselves are actually more expensive than the technology, and that's a game. You're right. The companies are playing this game where they're making the technology cheaper, get us off the books, so we don't have to use them as much. I'm a fan of books personally. Just come to my house, you can see all the books in there. And I think there's a purpose for that as well. If you go to all of our classrooms in the district, you're going to see books, actual books in use. Just ask Hazel; she can tell you how many books she's reading probably right now for her English class. But there's also some of the series, like for our AP courses, not all of the books are available in electronic format. The college level texts, for many of them, are only available in a hard copy format, which, just to give you an example, one of our science textbooks costs us over $250 per book. So they're raising prices exponentially in some areas. So I do agree with you. There has to be a healthy balance to all this, and we have to be cognizant of the screen time. Many of our elementary schools in particular have gone through things where they've had, technology-free nights, game nights with your family, trying to get off the devices. And it's not just for the kids. If we look at some of the adults, even in this room tonight, how many people have been on their cell phone while this meeting has been going on, or on their computers while the meeting has been going on? So we've become a society dependent upon technology. And I think there's a healthy balance that we have to strike in there. So I don't disagree with you, but what I will be happy to do is we'll bring the topic back to the Technology Committee. I will check on the next date of that committee, and if you'd like to attend, whoever is I don't think we have a board rep on that committee right now, but if we don't, we should probably discuss maybe having one of you attend that committee on a regular basis.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd just like to second what Stan said. I hadn't actually realized he was going to talk about the same thing I already talked about. I apologize for that.
You preempted him.
Yes, I apologize for that. So I just want to second basically what Stan said. Unless benefits are clearly demonstrated, we should pull back on electronic devices and electronic teaching. I think unless you can demonstrate a clear advantage over the old ways of the best, then I don't see, we shouldn't feel any pressure. Both Stan and I work in tech fields, and I think what we're trying to say is nobody should feel pressure to adopt tech unless there's a really, really good reason right here. And I think people feel pressure to do it to keep up, to maintain currency and to give the kids an edge and all these other things. But does it actually do that? And you need studies and hard data to conclude that. And I think that's what Stan's saying as well.
And again, I don't disagree with that at all. And again, with the classrooms that I've been observing this year, the classes that I've seen, there's been very little use completely of technology. There's maybe portions of lessons, but the younger and younger the students, or perhaps the students of higher need, I've yet to see where it's solely a tech lesson anywhere in our district. So I think our teachers understand that. Any teacher that we have understands the concept that it has to be also a balance of things in the classroom, and engagement doesn't necessarily mean putting someone in front of a computer and having them learn that way. I completely agree with that.
Okay, so thank you for that setup that I'm going to use my phone now to read something because I forgot to print it at home. But next on our agenda is discussing our Property Analysis Committee. I will read you the charge for said committee. Property Analysis Committee, PAC, is established to provide input and recommendations to the school district's leadership and Board of Education regarding the potential lease or sale of real properties owned by the Three Village Central School District. So tonight's the night. Last night, if you are interested in getting your application in, we'll be reviewing those, and we will make our selections by the next meeting, and it is up on the website. So thank you. All right, that takes us to 7C now, security. Dr. Scanlon.
So we presented at the last meeting the options for the board for consideration. We're just wondering if there's any questions from the board at this time with those options that are presented, and any movement in any capacity with this topic.
I'd just like to know from Jack, where are we with the cameras?
The Zero Eyes company is actually geospacing all our cameras with GPS coordinates so that if the Zero Eyes system activates, the police department as well as our internal security will know exactly where the initial detection occurred, and will follow the detection throughout the building. So right now we're GPS location every one of the cameras. It's actually a very tedious process.
And how long do you think that'll take?
I think we'll be done probably maybe about the first week in March. It integrates floor plans with Google Maps. It's actually very interesting how it's all put together.
Whomever wishes to answer this, but in thinking about all the different iterations that we've discussed, if we were to arm guards, would they be outside only? If we were to arm guards, would they be outside and inside? And what does inside look like? You know, do we have the ability to create options where they are segregated in the building? In other words, not roaming?
We could. I don't know if that's completely efficient, but we could do that, if you'd like to do that. You know, I think the element of, I don't want to use the word element of surprise, I think the element of surprise is more advantageous than segregating the security person to a particular part of the building, because everybody's going to know where that is eventually. You know, and you know, again, you know, I hope that you look at some of the other alternatives, maybe outside arming, to kind of, you know, get us started. You know, I do have a couple of high-level supervisors that are law enforcement that roam this district during the day. They are not assigned to a particular building. You know, I threw an option out to Dr. Scanlon of maybe having those two individuals who are, you know, their office is here, one's at Old Admin Building on Nichols Road, but they're roving around the district during the day. You know, I'm trying to just come up with some options that, you know, that may make you feel a little more relaxed about this topic, rather than jumping, you know, head on into it. We could kind of work our way into the system.
I appreciate that, because I think you can probably tell from my reticence that it's a huge leap. And I personally, I do think a measured approach might make the most sense if we were to do anything like that.
Yeah, I agree with Sue. I think what would be helpful is if we had a detailed list of what each of these possibilities would be. I mean, do we need to hire staff? How much do you think that's going to cost? How long the implementation is going to be to get that done? I think we need to know the nitty-gritty of all of these different options, including maybe anything outside of the box that you're talking about. Because I agree, I think we need to proceed cautiously and not just delve into something, but we need to know what that's going to look like. Because right now we're talking up here, and I think we need to know, you know, down here what's going on and what it's going to be.
Right, and I will be happy to give you that information and share that with you. But you know, from our last recommendations, there would be at this point in time, based upon the current staff that are within our security unit, no need to hire any additional personnel. The trainings that we were talking about, there's qualifications and things of that nature that might have budgetary implications and things that we'd have to consider.
Right. I mean, I don't want to go over any numbers or anything, because I don't
Certainly.
like to talk about that there. But just say, as an example, we wanted outside guards.
Mm-hmm.
But that might be taking away for people that were inside the building, so maybe we did need to hire 4 more people here or there.
Right,
You know what I
no-
mean? I just need to know what that is.
Absolutely, and that would not be the intention of diminishing our security footprint inside the buildings at the expense of having someone on the outside of the building. But you're faced with a quandary in the sense of when you looked at the survey of what the different districts are doing, how many are arming both inside and outside, how many are arming just inside, how many are just arming outside, how many are using private companies, how many are using our own. We've been very lucky because our hiring practices, because of what we've done in the past several years, who the people are that work for our district right now and their qualifications. We already know a number right now of what that would look like. We can provide you that detail. As far as parameters, if the board is charging us to try to come up with that for you, we already have some things that we can present to you on that, what that would look like. However, risk it sounding like Jack for a moment, that's probably not something publicly you want to address, because if we said, oh, the armed guard is going to have a vest on or wear a yellow pin, well, Hazel can tell you, and half the students that were here, they'll figure that out in about 5 seconds. They're sharper than half the adults. They'll know exactly who the guy is with the gun in the building. So if it's just limited to an individual or that nature. So we have to be very cautious about what we indicate, because just as much as we are sitting here watching this or participating in some capacity, there are not good people out there also doing the same thing. And there will be people that will want to know, okay, if I'm going to go there, this is what I'm going to have to try to avoid. So some of the things we already have in place with our cameras and this new system are pieces of, or tools that we are able to use. They're one part of a multifaceted approach to security. And I think we certainly can provide further information for your edification and moving forward with whatever the decision is by the board.
Yeah, I think right down to the brass tacks of what that would be in humans, in equipment, in any changes to our insurance, any changes at all. I think having all of that to consider would be important. And I did want to say, it is, for me, again, speaking only for myself, it's a testament to those people that you've hired, your staff. That is the only way I would ever consider it, me personally, because I know they know our kids, they know our buildings, and I trust them, so.
Right. So we've already indicated, we've already been in contact with our insurance carrier. There will be no change to our coverages, and there is no increases associated with this, no changes whatsoever for that. So that we've already presented a couple of times, so you don't have that component. There is no costs to the district on any shape or form. We're fully covered for any liability.
And Jack, this is a big thing, and my question to you is, how many guards do you see armed in each building, or outside of each building?
Well, we don't want to say that.
I would be cautious on and openly, publicly stating that right now.
But that could be something that we get in that
Correct.
report that we.
I do have that plan, I have that already planned
Right.
out. I'll go with Dr. Scanlon, I don't really want to address that this evening.
If there were no other questions, my question sort of to the board is, what is everybody comfortable with for a timeline, and what would be an endpoint before decisions could be made? Do you need a public forum? I know there've been conversations about surveys. What would you need in order to feel informed to make this decision? Thoughts?
I would like to know the cost, additional cost.
So I read one of the letters that was sent in, and they made the point, which is a fair point, and I think you're going to read this letter out, so I apologize to whoever wrote it that I'm preempting them again. But they made the point that security experts should guide this decision, but really that they should make this decision. I don't feel that. I feel that that's paternalistic. I think you can't impose anything on the teachers and the students and the parents here, that you have to understand what they think here. And so I think we have to get surveys. I would not personally want to impose anything on anybody without actually knowing, do you want to be protected, right? I mean, they may well say no.
Anyone else?
I'd like to see survey of the staff also.
And I agree with that also. I think we definitely need survey of at least the staff. I mean, they're the ones protecting our children day in and
Yep.
day out anyway. I would love to know what they think and what they would be comfortable with. And just getting all of the information for every topic that we can. I mean, there are some things that I'm personally uncomfortable with, so I would love to see what other options, down to how much it's going to cost, what the implementation's going to be, and how we can do that. So.
Anybody else? Timeline?
So, I mean, my understanding is there was multiple petitions that people had said they were going to provide to the board. I don't know, do we have those? Did they submit those anywhere? I don't know.
Have a early
We do
version.
have information from the last board meeting. I can send those out to you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? What are we thinking in terms of a timeline? What is your recommended timeline?
2 months ago. No, I'm sorry. Sooner the better. So, if there are things if there are costs associated, we're approaching a budget season, and we need to be able to plan for this accordingly. If this is going to take any of our dollars in our budget, we need to make sure that where is that money coming from? So, and as I said, March, as Jeff indicated, we're going into our budget season right now, so sooner the better in this. And I think just exactly what you're hearing from some of the people in the community is that it's, there's folks that are for it and folks that are against it. But I think the overarching thing that I'm hearing, that I'm getting a sense of, is they just want a decision to be made one way or the other. And whether or not they're happy with it one way or the other is irrelevant at this point. It's more that we get that sense. So we will work on these surveys and have them prepared and out. And then we'll also work on the plans, as you indicated. Jack has already formulated some of those already. And Jeff and I will work with the costs associated with that as well.
Thank you both. All right, we're going to move on now to our public comment period. Again, district residents who wish to speak must have previously submitted one of these. They're out in the hallway on the table. You fill it out and you hand it to the district clerk. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board and may speak only once during any given board meeting. Please understand that for the most part, we're not going to respond to your remarks at this time. As appropriate, and an administrator will follow up with you privately after the meeting. You're also welcome to stay after tonight's meeting and speak with any of us. Please remember that according to state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain comments, questions, or discussions about any individual student or employee. Thank you for your understanding. And our 30-minute public comment period begins now at 9:12. First up to the microphone over here, please, John Ozturk. Thank you. Come on up and just, again, state your name and where you live.
Good evening. My name is John Osturk, and I'm a parent of 2 students in the Tree Village district. My younger son attends Minosaki Elementary, and my older son is at Jelinas Junior High. Hopefully both will attend Ward Melville High School in the future. I recently became aware of a proposal by Savion, a subsidiary of Shell Oil, to build a large lithium-ion battery storage facility in light industrial area between East Setauket and Port Jefferson, just a mile from my home and Ward Melville High School. This proposal is deeply concerning because of battery storage facilities pose a significant fire risk. Lithium-ion battery fires burn at extreme temperatures, release toxic fumes, and are notoriously difficult to control. As a result, they can cause severe health hazards and environmental damage. These facilities do not belong near residential neighborhoods and schools. The absence of proper fire protocols significantly increases the risk of panic and chaos in the event of a large-scale battery fire. A recent battery facility fire in Moss Landing, California demonstrated that these risks are real and the potential consequences are too severe to ignore. Savion has been promoting the benefits of battery storage on social media while downplaying the very real dangers to our community. Some of their advertising appears to be misleading, I believe. For example, they claim their project would increase tax revenue for the Tree Village district, but they fail to mention that this would come only after receiving substantial tax breaks and exemptions, all while our residential property taxes continue to rise. After submitting a Freedom of Information Law request to the town of Brookhaven, I discovered that Savion has applied for financial assistance from the town's Industrial Development Agency and has indicated they will not proceed without this aid. I find it hard to accept the town of Brookhaven can subsidize a corporation that brings significant fire and environmental risks to our community. Members of the Board of Education, the Tree Village School District is a wonderful place to live, and I'm proud that my children are thriving here. However, this proposed battery facility presents a major fire risk and serious threat to our neighborhood and schools. I urge Tree Village residents to unite against this industrial development. Thank you for letting me address the board, and I would welcome any suggestions to help oppose this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ozturk submitted information earlier today, and I'll send it out to the board later on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, next up, Anthony DeTero.
Hello again. And what's that? Hello. Hello. Okay. So, I'm up here all the time, and my purpose of being up here is to talk about the reconfiguration and how I don't think it's in our students' best interest. You all know that. I'm really encouraged tonight because, every time I come here, we hear about teacher accolades, and I know my past colleagues, they're amazing, and our students, they receive all these awards. So, but tonight, I heard from Dr. Bach. I like your comment of that just because other districts do it, we don't have to do it. Great comment. Mr. Vizzo, I like that you were talking about tonight about bringing that tax cap number down, and And there was another comment. Oh, and Mrs. Ruffley, you had mentioned that, you want to know the nitty-gritties of everything, the down to the dollars. And that's one of the things I've been trying to get to from the beginning, because the reconfiguration plan that was, and I brought the original document, this is the first time the survey was done, and then this is with like the summary. And in the summary, it talks about saving a lot of money in the form of transportation and in the form of losing, not having the need to have sixth grade teachers. So if you need to see this is originally from Dr. Scanlon. But now we're talking about an over $2 million cost. Now, I don't like getting into the money part of it because that's not my real expertise and profession. But I've been meeting with a lot of community members. Sue, I told you many times that when we had spoken that I keep talking to people and we bring the logic together, they constantly are saying, well, why? We're doing so well. Why fix what's not broken? But now we're going to spend over $2 million, and it's not my number. It's the number that was presented in the budget status report as of 12/31/2024. This was on your website, and it's costing, in renovation costs, which are not even specific, over $2 million to do this. Mr. Vizzo, capital costs, Mr. Carlson, you mentioned that today, if we would to limit those capital costs. Remember, no one's asking us to do this. The state is not saying to change our configuration. We're doing it because we think we're going to give students better. I have a lot of questions, and I would love to debate Dr. Scanlon or anyone about the value and the benefits for ninth graders. But if we're really going to talk about that, we should have a conversation about the nitty-gritty, Mr. Ruffley, about the bullet points of scheduling, about how many kids are really going to get electives when you 25% kids back in the same footprint without really getting into more classrooms. There's a lot of questions, but we're spending the money when we can bring down that number because we're adding another $2 million. That's in the beginning. That's not even the full amount. So I'll add to that the next time I come up. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Lee Gullistad. Good evening, and forgive me if I mispronounce that.
Close enough.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Good evening, board. Yes, I'm here. I was here a couple of weeks ago talking about trying to enlighten you a little bit more about lithium-ion battery storage units. It's something I really hadn't heard of until 2 months ago. I've been living in this area for 35 years, and all of a sudden, I hear they're going to build this. So I became an advocate, and those fellow people over there, Community for Battery-Free Setauket, are sitting right there with me. Basically, I took a picture and I gave it to the young lady over there. You'll probably get that in your folder tomorrow. This is what it's going to look like, and I'll pass this on because I get extra. Pass along. It's over 400. Okay, 20-foot and 40-foot containers and 20-foot containers, each holding probably close to 10,000 cells of lithium-ion storage. That's how you produce the electricity. This community is coming into the industrial age. This is an industrial-sized unit, 440 megawatts, larger than the one that blew up in Morse Creek. The reason why I'm here right now, though, is because I'm not going to talk about politics of who's going to get it and how we're going to do it. Yes, I'm fighting and I'm talking to politicians and we'll see what happens. But I just want to tell you some facts here. What the politicians tell you, I found out is really not true. In the smoke that's here, this was done by a private guy in California, okay? He owns a commercial business that measures biohazards. He has 100 people working for him. He went out there and collected samples all over the town and half the state. Basically, it's absolutely amazing. And this, you'll have a copy of this as well, okay? Basically, he has a graph here of where his people picked it up, and within 10 miles of this unit, it was cobalt, lithium, magnesium, manganese, and nickel. All heavy metals. So when you're talking, so right now we are living in an industrial area. So when you're talking to the politicians, Dr. Scanlon, I want you to remember evacuations. because that's what they've done numerous times. Why are they evacuating? They tell you the smoke is harmless. It's not. Okay? Now, I'm here to tell you that I have 4 grandchildren. I pay taxes here, and I expect you to protect my children. And that's your obligation, and you've done that really well. Okay? But I also want to tell you, you have to think about the legal terms of this too. I learned this from Sachem High School, who I think you know. All right? They took it to court. Okay? And on one major issue, the New York State Supreme Court ruled that evacuation is an important part of
Thank you, Mr.
saving
Bellstad.
children.
Your time is up.
Oh, all right. So please.
Thank you. We'll take a look at everything tomorrow. Thank you so much. All right, next up is Alex Dispinagaitis.
Hi, everyone. I was going to come with another speech similar to the ones that I've said in the last few months, but you guys gave a great update just prior to this, so I just wanted to thank you guys for really considering everything, both sides of the topic, as I know it is a heated topic to discuss and debate. The only thing I'll use my time now for is just to address a couple of the things that I heard that I just wanted to try to clarify. I believe Dr. McKinnon was the one that said that the teachers should vote on whether or not it should be armed guards or not. And the logic behind it was that you should consent to being protected. Whether some people may not want that, but I've never been asked to vote on anything about as far as my protection goes. Whenever I go to airports, Stony Brook Hospital, Stony Brook School, any of the public places where I go to, nobody's ever asked me if I want to be protected by the cop, the guard, whatever the case may be. So I don't really think that that's a fair way. I will agree with, I think it was Ms. Ruffley that said the security staff, they should of course be comfortable. I absolutely believe and agree with that if they're comfortable carrying, then they absolutely should be, or if they're not, then they absolutely should not be. And then as far as I believe Dr. Bach also said about the petitions, I just didn't know where to send the petition, but I'm going to assume I'm going to send it to you, Ingrid. Okay, so I'll have that in your inbox and you'll have that in your folder tomorrow. But I just want to thank you guys for all this. So I know I've been here a lot frequently since October, so I'm happy to see that we're getting our hands closer together and that we can protect our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the last is something that was submitted to be read aloud from Vinny Capozio. Dear Three Village Trustees, today I want to address a critical issue, school security. There's been much discussion about increasing the number of mental health professionals in our schools, a support that is undeniably vital for the well-being of our students. However, I must ask a simple question. How many more mental health professionals are needed to stop a gunman once they have entered a school? The answer is clear. A mental health counselor's role is preventive and long-term, not designed to intercept an immediate threat. While we should wholeheartedly support mental health initiatives, they cannot substitute for the physical security measures required in an emergency. In addition to these measures, there has been interest in utilizing AI-enabled cameras as part of our security strategy. While these cameras offer valuable surveillance capabilities, they are fundamentally reactive tools. In an active shooter situation, AI cameras can only record and analyze events after they've begun. They cannot proactively intervene or prevent an attack. Immediate on-premises action by trained security personnel is essential. Some argue that the presence of armed guards might make students feel less safe or transform our schools into prisons. I have to ask, what is more traumatic, knowing there are trained professionals on our campus ready to protect us, or enduring the horrors of a tragedy akin to Sandy Hook? These statements are especially absurd when one considers that our current security personnel are already trained and capable of carrying firearms. To suggest that arming our security guards would compromise our safety is not only misleading, but also demeaning to their years of dedication and expertise. It's also an attack on their dignity and character. Furthermore, armed security is a standard safety measure in many facets of everyday life: airports, subways, sporting events, theme parks, and even Taylor Swift concerts. Do you fear security guards in any of these settings? Of course not. It is offensive to imply that schools are uniquely unsuitable for such safeguards. An armed guard provides both a deterrent to potential threats and an immediate response where every second counts. In previous discussions, there was a focus on surveying teachers and students about our security concerns. What expertise do our teachers and students have on security? We should be surveying our security experts who work in our district. I'd also request to hear public comment from our head of security on the matter. Additionally, I ask that the board examine the results from schools that have implemented programs such as the Guardian program in Florida, as well as review after-action reports and recommendations from past active shooter incidents. If not already done, I urge the board to seek recommendations from not only Homeland Security, but private security companies. Finally, I'd encourage board members to express their opinion publicly, as one of our board members did at last month's meeting. Thank you for your time, dedication, and service to our community. Please let me know if I can volunteer my time to any safety and security committee as we work together to ensure the protection of our students. And that concludes our public comment section. We're going to move on now to our items for board action. And I will turn it over to Dr. Scanlon.
So first item is the approval of the name change for Robert Cushman Murphy Junior High School to Robert Cushman Murphy Middle School.
Okay, do I see a motion? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? No abstentions? Okay, that carries. B?
Approval of the name change for Paul J. Jelinas Junior High School to Paul J. Jelinas Middle School.
Second? All in favor? No opposed? No abstentions? Thank you. Next?
Approval of the name change from Ward Melville Senior High School to Ward Melville High School.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Any opposed? No abstentions? Thank you. And D?
Approval of elementary school grade configuration from pre-K to 6 to pre-K to 5.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Thank you so much. And item D is our walk-in resolution. Mr. Mistecki?
That's a resolution regarding the 3020A matter that was discussed in executive session.
Do I see a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Any opposed and any abstentions? No. Thank you. Motion carries. All right, that brings us to our consent agenda now. Do I see a motion? Second? And we will begin. Item B, Ms. Germano.
They're just the minutes from the last board meeting.
Thank you. And beginning with C through L, Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. Item C is approval of health and welfare services contracts. This is with two other school districts. This is for Three Village resident students who attend private schools located within those school districts. Item D is the establishment of the health and welfare services rate that we charge to other districts for residents of other districts that attend private schools located within Three Village that we bill out for their health services. Sorry. Item E is approval of agreement with the company Farmers Fridge. This is to place the vending machines at Ward Melville High School for use after lunch periods are done, after school. That provides healthy meals as was presented to the board back in, I think it was November, by when Kevin Finley, Christina Driscoll, and Kerry Kilkenny did the Wellness Committee report.
Do you know when those are going into the high school?
Well, we'll find out tomorrow, if the board approves it. So then we'll send that, and we want to get started as quickly as possible. And hopefully it's a big success. Next item is declaration of emergency repair at Nescaig Elementary School. This is not just due to the flooding back in August. This is not a capital project in the sense of like last year we had the Setauket roof. This is a little different because the flooding, most of the cost associated with that was cleanup. So that's not a capital project, so that's not eligible for building aid. However, we're working with FEMA on getting a reimbursement, and I think it seems like we're actually going to get a higher percentage back from FEMA on our costs, even more so than we would have through building aid. Catherine Klein, our Director of Business Services, and Jason Grefsky, our Director of Facilities, are working with FEMA on the claim. So this is part of the process of that, declaring that an emergency. At a subsequent meeting, after we have all of the costs put together, finish everything, then we'll come back to the board and ask for a approval of a resolution to take money from reserves to pay for that. And then when we get the FEMA reimbursement, put it back into reserves. Because we don't have enough money in the budget, not earmarked for anything else, to pay for this without doing it that way. The next item is, well, the G, H, I, J, and K are our financial reports for the months of October, November, and December. These were reviewed earlier, this afternoon, by our audit committee. And L is donations. We have one donation. It's 9 brand new Apple iPads with chargers from Malloy College. Is it College or University? Malloy University. We'll use these for assistive technology for some of our students. This donation was secured by Dr. Biscari. And that's it for me.
There's an inside connection.
Thank you so much. Any other questions about any of those items? Okay. M, recommendations of Committee on Special Education Subcommittee and 504 Accommodation Plan meetings as dated. And N, recommendations of Committee on Preschool Special Education meetings as dated. And for O and P, Dr. Dabrowski.
Yes, first O, instructional. We have 8 instructional retirements, 3 instructional resignations, 1 instructional leave of absence, 1 appointment of an instructional teaching assistant position, several substitute teachers, as well as the appointment of junior high school coaches, annual and hourly assignments. P, non-instructional, we have 1 non-instructional retirement, 3 non-instructional resignations, several non-instructional appointments, including food service workers, special ed aides, and child care assistants, and additional non-instructional substitute appointments, including monitors, lifeguard, food service, and special ed aides.
Any questions?
So I would like to then just, as a result, recognize the dedication and congratulate the following people on their retirement.
Absolutely.
So we have Terry Etheridge, Ward Melville High School English teacher. We have Judy Forgione, Arrowhead School social worker. We have Ms. Kerry Galini, Director of E&L and World Language. We have Lisa Latchler, Mount Elementary teacher. Darlene Lang, Nassau Elementary teacher. Kim Rosner, Nassau Elementary teacher. Angela Cementelli, Ward Melville High School speech pathologist, and Kim Talercio, Ward Melville reading teacher. So I would like to recognize and congratulate them for their service.
Thank you, and congratulations to our retirees. All in favor of the items in our consent agenda? Any opposed? No abstentions? Thank you, that carries. And do I see a motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor? All right, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the February break.